What is up, YouTube? This is T1 coming at you with another video, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Jaws, the 1974 novel by Peter Benchley. I know it's been a while since I've tackled a book review. I think that's because by the time I sit down to make one of these, I'm already on to the next book. Like even now, I've read 3 books since I finished Jaws, but I figured I reviewed the movie already, and this story has always been one of the staples of spring and summer for me, so why not? A common thing I've heard my whole life is that this book is mid, little more than a set of bones to give to Spielberg, who then did his own thing with it. The biggest complaint seems to be that the characters are more unsavory. While that is largely true, I think this novel and Benchley's work as a whole is pretty underrated in this day and age. I'm reminded a little of Michael Crichton by Benchley's dry prose and meticulous research, but he does suck you in. The man clearly had a lot of passion and love for the ocean, and you feel it. It's one of the only subjects here approached with affection. That, to me, is the central difference between Jaws the movie and Jaws the book. This is a cold, cold story. It felt almost like a noir. While the town of Amity seems like a nice place in the film, Book Amity is rotten. It's corrupt. And since Chief Brody is, of course, a cop, we hear a lot about the worst of what happens in this town. Murders, rapes. These are not portrayed as especially uncommon in this version of Amity. From the moment the story starts, this place is barely hanging on. You get the sense that the only thing keeping these folks from killing each other is the prosperity that the beaches bring. And when the shark shows up, the whole house of cards comes down. It's a violent, sexual tale filled with flawed people. Take Chief Brody. Rather than the somewhat overwrought hero Roy Schneider played, this Brody is an alcoholic and at times a violent one. His marriage to Ellen is one fight away from going down in flames. Or Hooper. Rather than the charmingly dorky Richard Dreyfuss, this guy is an insufferable know-it-all. Quint is the only one who's basically the same in both versions. Although there are recognizable elements of each of them are far less heroic than the characters in Spielberg's movie. But that was kind of cool to me. It felt like reading one of those Marvel Elseworld stories where you can still tell you're reading about Steve Rogers or Wolverine, but now they're samurais or pilgrims or something. There are 2 in particular that I think are far more interesting in this version of the story. The first being Brody's wife, Ellen. This character was pretty much a non-entity in the film, but here she's probably the most conflicted. She's someone torn between her genuine love for her husband and their children, but also someone who can't help but yearn for the privileged life she used to lead. I'm not going to get into spoilers, but her story takes some shocking turns, especially once it's revealed that she and Hooper have something of a history. The other is the mayor, Larry Vaughn. He's a bit of a dimwit in the movie, but here the motivation for why he needs the beaches open is more fleshed out. There's a criminal element introduced as well. Larry's in debt to some pretty bad people, and if his main revenue stream is wiped out, he could end up killed by an entirely different kind of shark. The whole conflict around closing the beaches in general is explored a lot more here. It's not just a bunch of idiots ignoring safety regulations, it's a bit more complicated. And it's not just Larry either. The whole town depends on that revenue. As for the shark, you don't see too much of it, although there are a few passages written from its point of view that I thought were cool in a camp sort of way. What I enjoyed was the paranoia around the shark. There's this bit where a shopkeeper warns Ellen that the shark may in fact be the Leviathan from the Bible, sent by God to punish Amity. It kind of reminded me of all those Friday the 13th movies where there's a harbinger of doom character going like, don't go to Crystal Lake, it's cursed. I don't know, I enjoyed it. But while I think Jaws gets a bit of a bad rap, I can't pretend like it's any kind of masterpiece. The thing that holds it back from being a classic is that it's clearly the work of a young writer. At times, the sentences are clunky, and some of the emotional beats are just so insistent. In that way you get when an author isn't experienced enough to get the right feelings on the page with as few words as possible. Also, even if it's an interesting departure, the grim tone can sometimes be oppressive. On the one hand, it's interesting that there are no heroes, but it's a double-edged sword, because it's often hard to root for characters that are so grimy. Jaws the novel is not the landmark piece of entertainment that Jaws the movie is, but it is a decent enough diversion, and while my recommendation may be somewhat half-hearted, I'm still glad I read it. This is a 7 out of 10, T. Quentin 1, signing out.